But at the same time, we have some employees who are out there who are doing processes that are extremely important to this country and in fact are demanded of us through our Constitution, including civil defense, civilian defense federal employees. Those are people who are extremely significant when we have already stopped most of the research and development. So acquisition is no longer a major function. The idea of maintenance of what we have becomes extremely significant. And that's the problem that I have with this particular piece of legislation. I have a depot in my district. I have 11,000 workers who are on the main line. These are people who work to repair F-16s and A-10s and F-22s, and they're extremely significant, even though I consider them as blue-collar line workers. One bolt not put in place means a pilot dies at some point. These are extremely significant and important jobs. And as in the CBO study, I question where in the private sector they found an occupation equal to those people who repair A-10s and F-16s to make some kind of comparison at all. See, and those people are not making the average of 75 grand a year. They're not even coming up to the median, which you told me was roughly 72,000 a year. In that depot, those people working on the line, they average 56,511 if they are allowed to get overtime as part of the compensation package. And if we go into sequestration, they won't get that overtime. So the number will be significantly different. Some employees who do vital work for us are not making the six figures that we throw around a great deal about and we talk about in some situations. I talked to a former student of mine who's working at the base. His 7th year at the base, he's making 52 grand. He also has 2 kids that will be going to college next year. Those are the kind of people who I realize they get step increases if they're allowed. They might have bonuses if they are allowed. But a cost of living increase that is very puny makes a big difference to those, especially those who are on the bottom of the scale. And if furloughs, and I can't remember which of you two mentioned it, go into effect, at furlough for 22 weeks will become to about a 20% decrease in their take-home pay. And that is, I mean, these guys do not have Jack Lew's golden parachute to cover them in these times of the furloughs. So this is a significant issue to a lot of the people I have. Our approach today, and I understand this mentality as well, is for a lot of public employees to simply circle the wagons, especially if we seem to be taking an assault on them with a sledgehammer, when we don't need to. If we were to go after and say there are programs that should not be there and whack out whole programs, that would make sense. If we as a Congress say we should freeze congressional salaries, that would make sense. If we even went over the administration, the executive branch, the political appointees, and said those salaries should be frozen, that would make sense as well to me. If we went over and even tried to divide it at that $100,000 mark and say that quarter of our workforce making over 100 grand, freeze those one more year, I could actually easily justify that. But it's my line workers who make $52,000 if they get overtime. Those are the ones that I have a problem with. What, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Congresses ago, 4 Congresses ago, I was involved in some of the process that we call Reason to Believe. At that time, I was actually chairing one of those committees that came up with a lot of ideas of how we could do a better job at government, providing government services. I was extremely pleased with a lot of those ideas. Nobody ever actually did them, but I was pleased with those ideas. They were based on the military that at the time had implemented their lean program, which was based on the concept that you can actually improve the quality of the product, you can cut the cost, cut the number of employees, cut the size and the footprint that you use if you allow the employees who are on the line to come up with the ideas and reward them for that. That to me is a wise approach. Congressman Latham and Congressman Burgess had a bill in the last session of Congress that outlined an administrative approach which would be far better than this in actually trying to lower the cost of the federal government, cost of providing services to citizens, and do it in a rational way that took into thought and all these. If we were to involve the people who are on the front line in coming up with those ideas, we would not force them to run to protection. They would not have to circle the wagons because they fear what we are trying to do, and we actually could come up with a more nuanced approach to try to do this. Now, I admit what I'm talking about right now is an administrative process. And I also admit that I think this is an administration that does not have a lot of experience in administration. And they have surrounded themselves with people who, in my mind, are equally inept. But that doesn't mean we have to do it. I've looked over many of the suggestions, some of the amendments that have been presented to this particular bill. I don't find any of those really coming up with the nuances that I am trying to talk about, because there is a significant reason why you are saying what you're saying and bringing this bill forward. But there also is a significant number of people who don't need this approach in their life. These are the people who are sending kids to school and paying their mortgages and don't need to go with this particular approach. And there are nuances to doing it. Unfortunately, I'm hearing nobody with those nuances. I don't see those nuances in Simpson Bowl. I don't see the nuances in any of the amendments that have been proposed so far. So it's one of those things that we can either do this the right way and a creative way, or we can do it with a sledgehammer. And I'm afraid that this particular bill is, in my opinion, a sledgehammer. It presents a problem which is real and a problem which is significant and overreaches its mark. And that is one of the problems I have. I am looking out for those people who I think do a creative, valued, constitutionally ordained service, especially in the military installations, who are going to be harmed by this, and if we do this and sequestration at the first full time. So they get faced with a furlough and a freeze. I'm sorry, that's just unacceptable. And the problem is, we could do it better. We could find a better approach to reach the goals that we have in this particular endeavor, especially when you have a quarter of the workforce making six figures and a whole lot of people not. I thank you for your answers that you got for me. I appreciate staff coming up with those answers. I did not know the answers to those questions, so I appreciate those numbers. I thank you